I watched my sister shame my wife for not breastfeeding, then discovered breastfeeding would have put our baby's life at risk and disowned her. Comments kept pinging my phone. Family group chats exploded. My chest went tight. You know that spiral, right? Everyone had an opinion. I mean, strangers weighed in. It was relentless, and here is where it gets worse. At the hospital, the pediatrician flagged his labs, a rare enzyme deficiency, the kind that makes milk dangerous. The specialist pointed at the results and used plain words. Zero ability to process galactose meant breast milk equals poison. The printout had coffee stains. But the hazard box screamed critical, and my hands went cold. The doctor slid the folder closer. You can't breastfeed him. Her voice stayed firm. It isn't safe. I gripped the table. What happens if we do? Liver failure, sepsis, death, she said. My wife exhaled sharply. Then formula only. Back home, I opened the newborn screening report. My cousin emailed. 6 pages, bold warnings. A line reading critical. Immediate dietary restriction. Weight loss over 10% by day 5 was right there. Feed specialized formula every 3 hours, around the clock. No exceptions. 2 hospital visits in 4 days, documented, both tied to breastfeeding attempts. The metabolic specialist leaned forward, hands clasped. One more feeding could end his life. Her eyes didn't waver. This isn't a debate. We nodded, because breathing hurt. And that is when my sister decided to make it a public crusade. She posted my wife's photo with a caption about lazy formula moms. No context, no permission, full names, we don't even use social media, but relatives screenshotted everything. I phoned her, and she refused to remove it. She marched up to my wife outside the pharmacy and lectured loudly. A stranger clapped for her. Then everyone stared at us. The store manager shrugged and muttered it is free speech. My stomach twisted, and my jaw locked. Part of me wanted to disappear. Part of me wanted to burn everything down, okay? So I picked up the diaper bag and walked my wife to the car. Then I rang our pediatrician from the parking lot now. I know what you're thinking. Why not ignore her and move on? Right? Because the comments were already spreading, and my sister threatened to report us to child services. We needed an official statement. In writing, I put my phone on speaker. In the car, the nurse answered briskly, "How can I help?" "We need a letter about formula," I said. My wife rubbed her temples. "My sister is harassing us." Concern entered her voice. "Your baby has galactosemia, correct?" "Yes, classic type. Formula only." Keys jingled as I shifted. "We need the risks spelled out." She didn't hesitate. "I'll draft it now and email within an hour." I opened my email and watched for the notification. Meanwhile, my cousin texted screenshots of my sister's post. She'd tagged me, my wife, and our neighborhood group. And this is where everything fell apart. A neighbor commented she'd report us if we didn't explain publicly. I snatched the folder from the glove box. I sorted the discharge papers and the screening report. My hands shook while I highlighted the safest line. Then I drafted a post with the doctor's explanation. I kept names out but made the risks crystal clear. My wife touched my arm. "Are you sure?" I stared at the publish button. "We can't keep hiding." She swallowed hard. "Then tell them everything." I nodded once. "We explain, then block her." At this point, I'm just done. I mean, what else could I do? I posted the letter and the summary in our neighborhood group. I blocked my sister before she could comment again. Within minutes, the thread turned. People apologized to my wife and asked how to help. And then it happened. My sister drove to our place and laid on the horn. Neighbors peeked through curtains while she shouted from the sidewalk. "Come out. You're embarrassing me. You're hurting your son." I stepped onto the porch, back away from our home. She waved a printed post. "Breast is best. Science agrees." Her voice went sharp. "Your wife is selfish." My jaw clenched. Read the medical letter. Then I understood she hadn't read anything. I raised the papers and read the first 3 lines aloud. She covered her ears and kept chanting the slogan. A neighbor filmed from the sidewalk. Another neighbor asked her to leave us alone. She yelled. She'd call child services and sue us for neglect. My leg bounced and my throat tightened. My wife opened the door. "Please stop this." She glared at my wife. "You failed your child." Our neighbor stepped closer. "You're trespassing now," she scoffed. "Call whoever you want." I pulled my phone out. "Fine, I'm calling right now." I wondered if posting had made this worse. I dialed 911 and asked for an officer to clear a disturbance. My sister laughed and filmed me back. "You know that feeling when everything tilts? That is exactly how my knees felt." The operator confirmed help was en route. And that is when it happened. A comment popped under our post from the pediatrician's official account. She wrote, "With permission, the exact diagnosis and the fatal risk." My phone buzzed again, and the neighborhood thread flipped. Comments flooded in defending my wife and outing my sister's behavior. A patrol car rolled onto our street. The officer stepped out and looked from my wife to my sister. He asked who lived here and who needed assistance. I raised my hand and offered the letter. My sister tried to speak over me, repeating the same tired line. The officer held up a palm and turned toward her. "Do you live here?" "No, but I'm family." "Then leave now, not until they admit wrongdoing." "Ma'am, leave or face trespass charges." She finally backed away, but not before hissing she'd already reported us. The officer took the report and left a card. 10 minutes later, our doorbell rang again. I opened it to a woman with a briefcase. She introduced herself as Karina from Child Services. Her badge was scratched near the bottom edge. My shoulders tightened before my brain caught up. I stepped aside and waved her inside. She glanced past me toward the living room. Karina opened a folder and clicked her pen. Let's start with safety and feeding. I lifted the medical letter from the table. My wife placed the screening report beside it. Karina scanned the pages without expression. She tapped the heading, Diagnosis? I pointed, Classic galactosemia, confirmed by state screening. Her voice went neutral. Any breastfeeding since discharge? My wife straightened. 2 attempts before the results. Karina clicked her pen, source of formula. I lifted the can, prescription brand delivered by hospital. She nodded once and took notes carefully. Then she looked at my wife quietly. Her question hung. Has anyone pressured you to breastfeed? My wife swallowed. His sister has repeatedly, online and in person. Karina underlined a line, names and dates, please. I listed them from memory, voice steady. 3 public posts across 2 platforms. Family group threads, she wrote quickly and asked about threats. Any contact today? I nodded. She threatened to report us. Did she enter the home? I shook my head. Stayed outside, yelling slogans. Karina's tone sharpened. I'll document interference and harassment. She closed the folder and looked at our baby. She stood. We'll do an unannounced home visit soon. My chest tightened again at those words. Part of me wanted to argue. Part of me knew cooperation mattered. She left, and silence filled the room. I grabbed my keys and called the specialist. We met her at the hospital education office. She printed a letter on official letterhead. The language was brutally clear and specific. Formula only. 0 lactose. Immediate emergency for exposure. She looked at both of us steadily. The metabolic specialist leaned forward, elbows on desk. Her voice stayed calm. 1 ounce could trigger liver failure. And if that happens, hospitalization, invasive monitoring, possible transplant evaluation. My hands went cold against the chair. She added a final line for Child Services. Call me directly if needed, she wrote. We thanked her and headed for the elevator. In the elevator, my wife whispered, Does this ever end? I stared at the glowing numbers. It has to. What if she escalates? My voice came out low. Then we escalate legally. She nodded, eyes wet, but steady. Back home, a small white cooler sat waiting. The note on top read real food. My leg bounced as I lifted the lid. Inside were frozen bags labeled donor milk. My throat burned while I checked the camera app. There she was, leaving it minutes earlier. My wife gripped my forearm. She could kill him. Heat rose in my chest. We call the police now. Do we keep the milk? I sealed the cooler. Evidence, then disposal with guidance, she exhaled shackily. I hate that woman. I photographed everything and emailed the detective. Then I called our attorney, Baker. He answered on the second ring, clipped. Walk me through it. I kept it factual. Cooler, donor milk, captured on camera. Baker's tone went flat. This meets harassment and endangerment. Can we get a protective order today? Yes, I'll file for emergency relief. He told us to bring the footage immediately. We drove downtown and handed over copies. Baker drafted an affidavit and walked it upstairs. I paced the hallway counting breaths between footsteps. 30 minutes later, we had a hearing. The judge reviewed the filings in silence. Baker lifted a still frame from the video. The judge frowned and looked at me. Who is this person? My voice stayed even. My sister, the poster from earlier. Child's diagnosis is documented here. Baker gestured to exhibits. Yes, medical records and letters. The judge nodded once. Emergency order granted today. She signed it and set a return date. Violation would mean immediate arrest and jail. I texted the order to our neighbor group. Then, I blocked my sister everywhere. That night, we fed him and tried sleeping. Around 2 a.m, my phone vibrated. An unknown number left threatening voicemails. A man's voice droned. Reports coming. Formula is poison. Another voice sneered. Mother's nursing since forever. Admit guilt. I saved them. Baker needs these tomorrow. My wife rubbed her eyes. Do we ever get peace? I squeezed her hand. We'll make it. Morning brought a knock in a familiar voice. Karina stood there with another worker and clipboard. You announced visit today, as discussed, she noted. We welcomed them in and handed documents. They inspected the kitchen and the nursery. Formula cans lined the counter, sealed and labeled. Bottles air-dried near the sink. Walk me through your feeding schedule. I pointed to a chart. Every 3 hours, specialized formula. Any breast milk in the home? My wife opened the fridge. Only stored formula, nothing else. The second worker nodded. This matches the plan. Karina paused, then set down the clipboard. Her tone shifted to stern and deliberate. Listen carefully. We received another anonymous complaint. My back stiffened while I waited. The reporter alleges you refused breastfeeding advice. They claim your formula is hurting the baby. I gestured to the letter and monitoring log. Growth and labs are normal under this plan. Karina folded her arms and watched us. Here is the situation if interference continues. We can implement safety removal pending a hearing. Emergency placement could start tonight, if necessary. My stomach dropped, and my hands went cold. My wife's voice shook. What would trigger removal? Karina didn't blink. Any feeding with breast milk, any delay. I swallowed hard. What about harassment at our door? Karina picked up the order. Call police for any violation. We'll cooperate fully, you have my word. She nodded, as new knocking started. Another voice called through the wood, urgent and loud. Police, open up now. A male voice called. Karina stepped back and moved aside. I unlatched the chain and cracked the door. 2 officers stood there with a printout. He lifted the page toward Karina. Welfare check from an anonymous report. The officer glanced at the baby carrier. I could feel my pulse hammer. Okay, so we showed the letters. Karina pointed at the diagnosis line. The senior officer read, in silence. Then he nodded and holstered his pen. He turned toward the porch and listened. A car screeched somewhere down the block. Now, I know what you're thinking. More drama, right? It got worse fast. Tires crunched, and a voice carried. My sister shouted from the sidewalk again. You can't hide forever. The officer stepped forward. Ma'am, leave now. She spotted Karina inside and smirked. Good, watch them feed him wrong. Karina's tone went hard, back away. My sister's voice climbed. Make me. The senior officer radioed for another unit. I steadied the door with my foot. My hands went cold again. He looked at me, eyes steady. You want to trespass her? I nodded once. Yes, absolutely. He stepped onto the porch and motioned. Turn around, hands visible, right now. She backed away 2 steps and lunged forward. The second officer intercepted and cuffed her. She twisted and screamed about free speech. The metal clinked and my shoulders dropped. Karina wrote notes with tight strokes. The senior officer faced our camera doorbell. Recording captures delivery of contraband. I nodded and pulled up the clip. He watched the cooler handoff, focused. That violates this order. He tapped it. The cuffs clicked tighter as she thrashed. She locked eyes on my wife and spat. You poisoned him for attention. My jaw locked and heat rose. I breathed slow through my nose. Karina stepped toward her and spoke clear. Your actions endanger an infant. You will face consequences. The senior officer guided her to the car. She kept yelling until the door shut. The street quieted and my chest loosened. He returned to us. We will file. Expect a call from detectives. Karina gathered her papers and nodded. I'll close the report as unfounded. My wife reached for the counter and steadied. Her shoulders dropped while she exhaled hard. Are we safe now? Karina held my wife's gaze. Yes. But call if she appears again. After they left, the house felt still. Part of me wanted to scream. Part of me wanted quiet. I called Baker and updated him. He answered with a plan prepared. We press charges for order violation. We request a no-contact extension. We notify platforms about harassment. I agreed and hung up fast. My phone buzzed with neighbor messages. Apologies poured in with sincere offers. One wrote, we believed lies, we regret. My throat burned, and my jaw eased. My wife opened the freezer and paused. What do we do with that? I called the hospital lactation office. They instructed us to surrender it. We sealed the cooler and drove over. A staff member logged it as evidence. The stamp looked crooked on the receipt. She thanked us and offered resources. Back home, the quiet felt heavier. I strapped our son in my arms. His breathing settled against my chest. I whispered near his ear. You're safe, little man. My wife leaned close and rested quiet. The next day, detectives called for statements. We met them at the station lobby. A detective reviewed the videos and letters. His voice went firm during questions. She knew the diagnosis, correct? I kept eye contact. Without a doubt. And she delivered donor milk anyway. My wife answered, voice steady. Yes, he wrote. Then closed his notebook. We'll forward charges to the prosecutor. You may be asked to testify. We drove home without talking much. My leg bounced the whole ride. That evening, Baker called with updates. Arraignment tomorrow morning. Short hearing. Protective order extension on the docket. We showed up first and waited. My hands went cold in the hallway. The judge entered and reviewed the file. My sister shuffled in with a lawyer. She refused to look our way. The judge asked counsel to approach. Baker lifted the video still again. The judge read the order violation. Do you understand the charges today? Her lawyer answered brief. Yes, Your Honor. The judge turned to us and spoke. Do you seek a longer order? Baker glanced at me and nodded. 1 year, no contact. All platforms. The judge marked the calendar and granted. Violation will lead to custody now. My sister stared at the table surface. The prosecutor announced the plea next. Guilty to violation. Probation with classes. The judge accepted it without commentary. We walked out into a bright hallway. My shoulders eased for the first time. Outside, neighbors waited near the doors. They pressed our hands and apologized. One looked at my wife. Solemn. We believed her. We were wrong. My wife nodded and held our son. Feed your baby how he survives. That night, the house felt quiet. We set alarms and mixed formula. My wife pumped milk for donation again. She labeled bags for the milk bank. Her hand steadied with each label. I rinsed bottles and checked the chart. Our son ate and drifted asleep. We sat there and listened to breathing. Part of me wanted revenge forever. Part of me wanted nothing more. Now, I know what you're thinking. Blood is blood. Forgive family someday. Hear me out. Okay. She weaponized ignorance after clear proof. She tried to force deadly feeding. She turned harassment into public theater. Forgiveness is not a court order. Boundaries are how I keep him breathing. My job is protecting my family. Everything else comes after that. If you're a parent under fire, listen. Fed is best. Full stop. Formula saved my son's life. Breast milk nourishes many, but not all. Trust your doctors and your gut. Fight for your kid. If family harms, walk. So yeah, that is my story.